The locks clicked behind me, a sound more final than the slam of the door just moments before. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, stood framed in the doorway of the house I had shared with her son, Mark, her face a mask of grim satisfaction. "You need to leave, Sarah. Now." Her voice was brittle, sharp shards of ice slicing through the thick fog of grief that had enveloped me since Mark's sudden death just 6 weeks prior. Rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the storm inside my chest. My hands trembled, not just from the chill November air seeping through my thin cardigan, but from the sheer disbelieving shock. My daughter, 5-year-old Lily, clung to my leg, her small face buried in my jeans, whimpering softly. "Grandma Ellie?" she mumbled, her voice muffled and confused. Chloe, Mark's sister, hovered behind Eleanor, a faint, cruel smirk playing on her lips. "It's family property, Sarah," Eleanor continued, her tone leaving no room for argument, no space for the shared memories, the love, the life Mark and I had built within these walls. Mark would have wanted practicalities dealt with swiftly. This house, it's too much for you to manage alone. Besides, it needs to stay in the bloodline. Bloodline. As if my marriage, my daughter, meant nothing. As if the vows Mark and I exchanged were merely temporary ink on a meaningless page. I opened my mouth, wanting to scream, to rage, to demand how they could be so monstrous, but only a strangled gasp escaped. My own boxes, hastily packed not by me but by them, sat accusingly on the wet porch steps beside me. They hadn't even waited for the earth to fully settle over Mark's grave. Where were we supposed to go? What were we supposed to do? The raw wound of Mark's absence gaped open, and his own mother, his own sister, were pouring salt directly into it, their faces devoid of empathy, their eyes cold and resolute. I felt profoundly, terrifyingly alone, underestimated, and discarded like yesterday's news. The weight of their callousness pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating, right there on the doorstep of my own home. We stood there in the driving rain for a moment that stretched into an eternity, the closed door a stark symbol of our expulsion. I pulled Lily closer, shielding her small body with my own, my heart aching with a pain so profound it threatened to shatter me completely. Looking back at the warm glow spilling from the living room window, our living room window, felt like staring into a past life, one violently ripped away. Images flooded my mind. Mark carrying me over this very threshold 5 years ago, laughing, painting the nursery walls yellow together, dreaming of the child who would fill it. Quiet evenings curled up on the sofa after Lily was asleep, his arm a comforting weight around my shoulders. How could this place, so saturated with love and laughter, now feel so hostile, so alien? A sob escaped my lips, quickly choked back. I couldn't fall apart, not in front of Lily, not out here on the street. A friend, bless her soul, had offered her tiny spare room when I'd tearfully called her an hour ago, sensing the escalating tension. Now, hailing a cab with shaking hands, stuffing our few permitted belongings into the trunk, the shame was a physical weight. Settling into the cramped back seat, Lily finally looked up, her big blue eyes, so like Mark's, swimming with confusion and hurt. "Mommy, why did Grandma Ellie shout? Why aren't we sleeping in my bed tonight? Is Daddy still gone?" Each question was a tiny dagger twisting in my gut. How could I explain this level of cruelty to a child? How could I tell her that the grandmother who used to bring her cookies now saw her, and me, as inconvenient baggage? The grief I carried was a heavy cloak, but now beneath it, a different emotion began to stir. A slow, simmering anger. I replayed years of interactions in my mind. Eleanor's constant, subtle criticisms veiled as concern, Chloe's envious glances and snide remarks, Mark always stepping in, smoothing things over, defending me with a gentle firmness. "They don't mean it, Sarah," he used to say. "They just worry." Had he been naive? Or had he known, deep down, what they were capable of? Had he tried to protect me even then? The thought sent a fresh wave of desolation over me, mingled with the bitter taste of betrayal from the family he had left behind. The days blurred into a monotonous cycle of grief, anxiety, and the suffocating confines of my friend Anna's spare room. It was impossibly kind of her, but the constant awareness of being an imposition wore heavily on me. Lily was quiet, withdrawn, drawing endless pictures of our house with a sad-faced stick figure mommy and a floating, ghost-like daddy nearby. My attempts to access Mark's and my joint savings account were met with unexpected hurdles. Statements were suddenly being redirected, and online access seemed mysteriously blocked. Eleanor, when I'd finally gathered the courage to call her mobile, had been curt. "Financial matters are being handled, Sarah. It's complicated. Best leave it to the family." Her condescending tone implied I was too fragile, too incompetent, too outside the circle of trust to be involved in my own husband's affairs. Panic began to set in. Mark had always been the primary earner. My part-time job barely covered groceries. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable, secure in the life we were building. Now, cast adrift, I felt the ground crumbling beneath my feet. Desperation gnawed at me. I spent hours staring blankly at the ceiling, sleep evading me, Mark's absence a physical ache beside me in the unfamiliar bed. Then, a memory surfaced, hazy at first, then sharpening into focus. A few months before the accident, Mark had come home late from work, looking unusually preoccupied. He'd placed a sturdy, unremarkable cardboard box deep in the back of our bedroom closet, behind his winter coats. "Just some old work papers. Duplicates, mostly," he'd mumbled when I asked, quickly changing the subject. It had seemed insignificant then, but now, clinging to any sliver of hope, any connection to him, it felt like a potential lifeline. Did I even grab that box when they rushed me out? My heart pounded. I remembered frantically throwing clothes, toiletries, and Lily's favorite teddy into bags, but the box? I pictured the closet, the frantic grabbing. Yes. I was almost certain I'd shoved it into the bottom of the largest suitcase, assuming it was just what he said it was. Could it hold something more? Anything? A flicker of determination cut through the fog. I had to find that box. It took me 2 days to work up the nerve to unpack properly in Anna's tiny room, the act itself feeling like a surrender, an acceptance of this temporary, diminished reality. Suitcases lay open, spilling their contents onto the floor, a jumble of hastily grabbed clothes and fragmented memories of the life I no longer lived. My heart hammered against my ribs as I finally reached the bottom of the largest case. There it was. The plain brown cardboard box, heavier than I expected old work papers to be. My fingers trembled as I lifted the lid. It wasn't full of papers. On top lay a thick, sealed manila envelope addressed simply to Sarah. Beneath it were several smaller, individually labeled envelopes and a small velvet pouch. With shaking hands, I tore open the main envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten in Mark's familiar script, and a single unfamiliar key taped securely to the bottom of the page. "My dearest Sarah," the letter began, and tears immediately blurred my vision. He wrote about his love for me, for Lily, his hopes for our future. Then, the tone shifted. He wrote about his growing unease regarding his family, particularly his mother and sister, their attitudes towards me, their obsession with family legacy and assets. He confessed his fear that if anything ever happened to him, they wouldn't hesitate to push me aside. He'd hoped he was wrong, prayed he was paranoid, but couldn't shake the feeling he needed to take precautions. He called it his just-in-case plan. He explained the key was for a safety deposit box he'd opened in my name only, detailing the bank and box number. He urged me to contact a specific lawyer, a Mr. Harrison, whose details were in one of the smaller envelopes, before I did anything else. He apologized for the secrecy, saying he didn't want to worry me unnecessarily but felt compelled to protect us. The velvet pouch contained a simple gold locket, one I'd admired months ago. Reading his words, seeing his familiar handwriting, feeling the weight of the key in my hand, it was like he was right there, reaching out across the void. Grief washed over me again, sharp and piercing, but this time it was mingled with overwhelming gratitude and a dawning, fierce resolve. He had known, he had seen them clearly, and he had acted to protect us. The next morning felt different. The oppressive weight of victimhood had lessened, replaced by a sense of purpose, albeit one laced with trepidation. I clutched the envelope containing Mr. Harrison's details, Mark's letter tucked safely away. Lily seemed to sense the shift in my mood. her usual breakfast-time quietness replaced with tentative questions about what was in the secret box. I simply told her Daddy had left us some important things to look after. Finding a quiet corner while Anna took Lily to the park, I dialed the number for Mr. Harrison's law firm. My voice shook as I explained who I was and that my late husband, Mark, had instructed me to contact him. The receptionist was professional and calm, putting me through almost immediately. Mr. Harrison's voice was kind, but direct. Mrs. Davenport, yes. Mark, Mr. Davenport, spoke very highly of you. I'm so sorry for your loss. He asked me to expect your call, though of course we all hoped it would never be necessary. He listened patiently as I recounted the events of the past few weeks. The eviction, the blocked accounts, Eleanor's pronouncements. There was a pause on the line, filled only by the sound of shuffling papers. I see, he said finally, his tone hardening slightly. Mark anticipated something like this might occur. He was, let's say, thorough in his preparations. He suggested I come to his office as soon as possible and bring the safety deposit box key and any other items Mark had left. The appointment was set for the following afternoon. A wave of relief so potent it made me dizzy washed over me. I wasn't alone in this anymore. Mark had left me an ally, a plan. As I hung up, I remembered a conversation Mark and I had shortly after Lily was born. He'd been watching Eleanor fuss over the baby, her possessiveness almost palpable. Later that night, he'd held me close and said, Sarah, no matter what, you and Lily come first. Always. Don't ever forget that. At the time, I'd dismissed it as a sweet reassurance. Now his words echoed with profound, heartbreaking significance. He had meant them literally, anticipating a battle I never imagined I'd have to fight. Sitting opposite Mr. Harrison in his quiet, book-lined office felt surreal. He was older, with kind eyes but a sharp, intelligent gaze that missed nothing. He had already retrieved the contents of the safety deposit box using the key I provided, and a letter of authorization Mark had left with him. Laid out on the polished mahogany desk between us were several official-looking documents and another letter from Mark, this one addressed jointly to me and Mr. Harrison. The lawyer gently guided me through everything. The first bombshell: Mark had legally transferred the title deed of our house solely into my name 8 months before his death, using a portion of his own inheritance money to formally buy out any perceived shared family interest, a transaction meticulously documented and filed, completely unbeknownst to Eleanor or Chloe. The house was mine. Unequivocally, legally mine. My breath hitched. He hadn't just protected me. He'd used their own obsession with finances and property against them. But there was more. Mark had also established a substantial trust fund, naming me as the sole beneficiary and Lily as the contingent beneficiary, funded through his life insurance policy and personal investments. Crucially, he had appointed Mr. Harrison and a neutral banking institution as co-trustees, specifically excluding any member of his immediate family from having any control or access. He had effectively built an impenetrable financial fortress around us. The final item was Mark's letter. It detailed his reasoning again, his love, his apologies for the secrecy, but also his explicit instructions. He wanted Mr. Harrison to hold on to the proof, the deed, the trust documents, until after his family made their move. He predicted they would overplay their hand, blinded by greed and their low opinion of me. He wanted them to expose their true natures fully before the truth was revealed. Let them think they've won, Harrison, he'd written. Let them get comfortable. Then Sarah can reclaim what is rightfully hers, not just legally, but morally. Tears streamed down my face, tears of relief, profound love, and a growing, righteous anger. Mark hadn't just left me. He'd left me armed. He'd orchestrated this entire defense from beyond the grave. The vulnerability I'd felt dissolved, replaced by a steely determination. They had made their move. Now, it was my turn. Mr. Harrison and I spent the next hour meticulously planning our response. The lawyer, clearly respecting Mark's strategy and appalled by the family's behavior, was fully committed. Mark's instructions were clear, he reiterated, tapping the copy of the deed. He wanted the revelation to be impactful, to leave no doubt about their actions or his intentions. An idea began to form. audacious but perfectly aligned with Mark's foresight. We discovered through discreet inquiries, a casual chat with a sympathetic distant cousin Mark had also apparently confided in, that Eleanor was planning a small family gathering at the house the following Saturday. Not a memorial, but a quiet, sorting through Mark's things event, a way to solidify her reclaimed dominance over the property in front of select relatives. It was disgustingly opportunistic and utterly perfect for our purposes. I felt a tremor of nerves, the thought of confronting them, especially in that house, still daunting. But then I pictured Lily's confused face, heard Eleanor's dismissive tone, felt the phantom weight of Mark's protective arm. This wasn't just about a house or money. It was about honoring Mark, protecting our daughter, and reclaiming my own dignity. Mr. Harrison assured me he would handle the legal pronouncements. I just needed to be present, to stand my ground. We arranged for him to accompany me. He suggested I bring Lily, not to witness ugliness, but because her presence would underscore who Mark was truly protecting. As I left his office, clutching copies of the deed and trust documents, I felt taller, stronger. The woman who had stumbled out of that house in shock and tears just weeks ago was gone. In her place was someone else, someone forged in grief and betrayal, now armed with truth and a quiet, unshakable resolve. They thought they had kicked out a helpless widow. They had no idea they'd just lit the fuse on Mark's final protective act. The biggest mistake wasn't just kicking me out. It was underestimating both me and the husband they thought they knew. Saturday arrived cloaked in a brittle, cold sunshine that did nothing to warm the knot of anxiety in my stomach. Holding Lily's small hand tightly, I stood with Mr. Harrison on the pavement, looking at the house. My house. Cars belonging to various aunts, uncles, and cousins were parked along the street. Through the living room window, I could see Eleanor moving about, playing the gracious hostess in a home she had essentially stolen. Taking a deep breath, I straightened my shoulders. Mr. Harrison gave me a reassuring nod. We walked up the path, the familiar crunch of gravel underfoot sounding different today. Purposeful. I didn't knock. I used the spare key Mark had insisted I keep on my personal keychain, the one Eleanor hadn't known about or bothered to confiscate. The lock turned smoothly. Pushing the door open, we stepped into the hallway. Conversation in the living room immediately ceased. All eyes turned towards us. Eleanor's face registered shock, quickly followed by outrage. Chloe, standing beside her holding a porcelain figurine, one of my wedding gifts, froze, her mouth falling open. "Sarah, what is the meaning of this?" Eleanor demanded, her voice rising, color flooding her cheeks. "I told you explicitly." "You told me to leave my own house, Eleanor," I interrupted, my voice steady, surprisingly calm despite the furious pounding of my heart. "A house that belongs solely to me." A ripple of murmurs went through the assembled relatives, Mark's passive father looking acutely uncomfortable, aunts exchanging wide-eyed glances. Chloe scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous, Sarah. Dad and Mom helped Mark with the down payment years ago. It's always been understood." "Perhaps you should examine the actual legal documentation," Mr. Harrison interjected smoothly, stepping forward. He held up a certified copy of the deed. Mark Davenport transferred the full, unencumbered title of this property to his wife, Sarah Davenport, 8 months prior to his passing. It is entirely, legally, hers. Any perceived familial claim is null and void. He placed the deed firmly on the coffee table in the center of the silent room. Eleanor stared at it, her face paling, her eyes wide with disbelief. Chloe snatched it up, scanning it frantically, her expression shifting from anger to sheer, sputtering disbelief. This can't be right. Mark wouldn't do this," she stammered, looking wildly at her mother. Eleanor seemed speechless, her carefully constructed composure crumbling before our eyes. The air crackled with tension, the silence deafening, the silence stretched, thick and heavy with shock and dawning realization. Eleanor finally found her voice, though it trembled with fury. "This is absurd. A trick. Mark was unwell, perhaps unduly influenced." She glared at me, her eyes venomous. "You manipulated him." Mr. Harrison stepped forward again, his calm authority cutting through her accusations. "On the contrary, Mrs. Davenport, Mark was perfectly sound of mind. He arranged this transfer, along with establishing a significant trust fund solely for Sarah and Lily's benefit, precisely because he anticipated this exact scenario. He anticipated your unwillingness to respect his wife or his wishes after his death. He took legal steps to ensure their protection, steps you cannot undo. He gestured towards the documents he still held. The trust, managed by myself and the bank, ensures Sarah and Lily's financial security, completely independent of your control or approval. Gasps rippled through the room. Mark's father sank onto a nearby chair, covering his face with his hands. Other relatives shifted uncomfortably, their gazes darting between Eleanor, me, and the damning papers. The narrative they'd likely been fed, poor, overwhelmed Sarah needing family guidance, evaporated in the face of Mark's deliberate, protective actions. Chloe threw the deed onto the table. "Get out!" she shrieked, her face contorted with rage. "Get out of this house!" I met her gaze, unflinching. "No, Chloe, you need to leave, both of you." I turned to Eleanor, whose face had crumpled into a mask of stunned fury and public humiliation. "You have 1 hour to remove your personal belongings. After that, I will consider anything left behind as abandoned property." Eleanor looked ready to explode, but Mr. Harrison's steady presence and the weight of undeniable proof seemed to hold her back. Muttering curses under her breath, she grabbed her handbag, signaling furiously to Chloe. Without another word, they stormed towards the door, shoving past bewildered relatives. As the door slammed shut behind them, a profound quiet fell over the room. I stood there, Lily pressing against my side, looking around at the familiar walls, the furniture, the photos of Mark smiling down at us. It was truly ours again. Relief washed over me, immense and cleansing, extinguishing the last embers of fear and replacing them with the quiet, steady glow of vindication. Mark had protected us, his love reaching across the divide, ensuring his family's biggest mistake was revealing their true colors so irrevocably. The weeks that followed were about reclaiming not just the house, but our lives. The locks were changed immediately, a symbolic and necessary act. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to unpack the life that had been so abruptly put on hold, piece by painful piece. Sorting through Mark's remaining belongings was heart-wrenching, yet doing so in the safety and sanctity of our own home, free from the judgment and interference of his family, felt right. Lily gradually began to relax, her smiles returning more frequently, the sad stick figures disappearing from her drawings. The house slowly filled with laughter again, fragile at first, but growing stronger each day. The trust fund Mark established provided the security we needed, allowing me time to grieve properly and plan for our future without immediate financial panic. Mr. Harrison handled all communication with Eleanor and Chloe, who, after a few initial blustering threats relayed through him, fell silent, presumably consumed by their own humiliation and the social fallout within the extended family. Some relatives reached out tentatively, offering apologies for their passivity, their discomfort clear. I accepted their words politely but kept my distance, the trust irrevocably broken. My relationship with Mark's family was over, a casualty of their own greed and cruelty, but instead of sadness, I felt an unexpected lightness, a sense of liberation. I learned that true family isn't defined by blood, but by love, respect, and unwavering support, qualities Mark embodied and ensured surrounded us even after he was gone. Standing by the living room window one evening, watching Lily play, I felt Mark's presence not as an aching void, but as a quiet strength surrounding us. This house wasn't just bricks and mortar, it was a testament to his love, his foresight, and ultimately to the resilience I discovered within myself when pushed to the absolute brink. Their biggest mistake wasn't just kicking me out, it was forcing me to find the power I never knew I had. Looking back now, the pain of those initial weeks feels like a distant storm, fierce and terrifying while it raged, but ultimately survivable. The scars remain, reminders of the betrayal and grief, but they no longer define me. Instead, they underscore the strength I found in my darkest hour, guided by Mark's enduring love and foresight. This journey taught me that sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally can inflict the deepest wounds, blinded by their own issues, greed, jealousy, control. But it also taught me about my own resilience, the fierce protective instinct of a mother, and the quiet power of truth. It proved that even in the face of profound loss and overwhelming adversity, you can reclaim your space, your voice, and your future. If you've ever felt underestimated, dismissed, or wronged by those you trusted, know this. Your worth is not determined by their opinion. Your strength often reveals itself when tested, and sometimes the biggest mistakes others make are the catalysts for your own empowerment. Don't be afraid to seek help, to stand your ground, and to fight for what is rightfully yours, whether it's a physical space, your financial security, or simply your own peace of mind. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please give this video a like and consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear that they are stronger than they think. Tell me in the comments below if you've ever had to overcome a difficult family situation or stand up for yourself when you felt invisible. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming challenges and finding your strength. Until next time, stay strong.